please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight we'll actually be opening with the NRTA Advisory Board meeting, so I'll call that to order. We'll accept the agenda. Are there any public comments at this time for anything that's not otherwise on the agenda? Hearing none, I will go to Paula Leary.
Very quickly, a couple of announcements. I just want to make you aware of a funding award that the NRTA received from Mass DOT. It's in the amount of $30,375, and it will be for marketing of the year-round bus service. The funding will be available for FY20, so it'll be like that October to April timeframe that we'll have that much use for continued marketing efforts.
Great.
And then it's mid-May, so that means our summer service is about to begin. So just to let everyone know that on the 18th, the Mid-Island Loop by Comet Loop Sconset via Old South Road route will operate from 7 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. Mid-Island Maya Comets will continue to operate on a 30-minute schedule, and the big change will be the Sconset via Old South Road route that will go back to operating on its hourly schedule and will service Sconset each trip. It'll leave town at quarter after every hour and Sconset at quarter of every hour. And then on May 24th, the Nantucket route will begin with hourly service leaving town on the hour and Nantucket on the half hour.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of September 26th?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And the year-round service update?
Yes. Now that we have 1 year of winter service, year-round service under our belts, I think it went very well. Operationally, things went as we anticipated. Rob, there was no snow the first winter year-round bus service. I told you, spring we wouldn't have snow. That was a big help. So I provided you with some information on ridership, with revenue miles and revenue hours, so you can see the amount of service we were averaging from October when year-round started through the end of April, 171 riders per day. And if you look at the totals, with the Maya Comet having the most ridership, then the Mid-Island followed by the Old South. That's what we see in our summer service too, with Maya Comet with the most riders. Then I also provided a breakdown of our operating expenses and revenue and funding sources that are based on our actuals through April and projections for May and June. And we're right on target for what we anticipated for the federal, the state, and more importantly to you folks, the local assessment amount.
Quick question on the winter. How did the ridership and the revenue compare to your projections?
Ridership was below projections, but we're up a little bit in the revenue. And I think that's with for some lotting and business.
Okay. It will probably grow. This reliability of with the reliability of the service, the ridership should grow.
Yes, yes, and we're continuing our market efforts with different targeting groups and businesses and things that wanted the year-round service to get them on board to promote it within and encourage ridership. And we'll just continue to do that.
Yeah, I hope that we look possibly, if it continues at this level, I hope we look at potentially other models, run an algorithm, picking people up at their door as opposed to this potential. Look at other options. What works in the summer may not be the best way to do it in the winter, and it might not be the most cost-effective way. So I want to make sure that we're looking at everything that we can as we go forward. You know that. We've talked about it.
Yep.
The next piece was supposed to be a report from Jason Bridges, who's out sick tonight, and Jim Kelly was our other member who is no longer with us. We're going to appoint someone new tonight.
I can give you a very quick one.
That would be great.
That's appropriate. The The February 6th meeting was, the February 6th meeting was Jim and Kelly met with the auditor without me in the room, just to go over the audit and financial statements. We're still in good standing, a good position. There were no internal control issues with that. And I don't think Jim or Jason had any issues with the financial statements as reported. Jason and I met on the 13th just to go over the preliminary budget. The only change that I made, and that is reflected in the budget you'll see in the next item, is that $30,000 was added to promotion and marketing in the operating line item, expense item, and then the state contract assistance amount.
Okay, any questions?
No.
Okay. So are we,
And then just to present the preliminary budget that the board has in its packets for FY20. Quickly, the proposed revenue is $1,721,000, $726.25. Total expenses are $3,177,057. Local assessment will be at $886,922. The state contract assistance $568,510. And that brings us to zero.
okay, any questions? Okay, so last we need to appoint a new finance and audit committee member and compensation committee member.
Can I tell you what Jason and I talked about?
Sure.
Christy, he felt you, if no one else wanted to do it, that he would like to bring you on board in that position as the newest board member, and then to be able to carry over the next couple of years. We meet 3 to 4 times a year. They're usually quick meetings. Check any questions you might have if you're willing to, except Jason's not.
Does someone present want to make the nomination?
I'll nominate her then for Jason.
And I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, any other business? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to adjourn the NRTA advisory.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now I will open the May 15th Select Board meeting. Thank you. I don't believe that there are any changes to the agenda, so we'll accept that and move on to announcements.
Thank you. We have a number of board, committee, and commission vacancies and appointments coming up. They are all on the town website. We have public hearing number 1 coming up next week for people applying for one group of committees, and then another one coming up on June 5th. That's the second group, and then your appointments will be made, annual appointments made on June 19th. So again, there's a lot of information on the town website about all of these. Okay, our Nantucket Police Department annual presentation of departmental personnel awards. I think the chief's going to give us an overview, and then when he is done with his overview, I think we will go to the front of the table here and welcome the people down. Do you want us to do that now? Or
Yeah, why don't you come on up? We'll-
Okay.
Madam Chair and members of the Select Board, it's always my pleasure every year to recognize the police officers that work for the town of Nantucket for the good work that they do. We single out a few, although there's a lot of things, good things that happen every year. I like to try to highlight where some of our challenges were and some of the rough things that we overcame. And I think this year you'll be familiar with at least one of the issues. But I'm going to do something a little different this year also, in that many of these officers have received awards for life-saving and other things in the past, and I'm going to point that out. Although it may not be an all-inclusive list. If I forgot something, I apologize, gentlemen and ladies. But I'm going to start. The first award is Detective Christopher Kelly. Detective Kelly, along with several members of the Nantucket Fire Department, have been offering Stop the Bleed training to other public safety personnel and members of the general public. This training is intended to provide instruction on how to properly act if they are confronted with a life-threatening bleeding situation. The Stop the Bleed campaign was initiated by a federal interagency work group convened by the National Security Council staff and the White House. The purpose of the campaign is to build national resilience by better preparing the public to save lives by raising awareness of basic actions to stop life-threatening bleeding following everyday emergencies, as well as man-made and natural disasters. So far, nearly 100 members of the Nantucket community have been provided this training. Detective Kelly has been recognized as a positive trainer and good ambassador for this department. His dedication and performance are above and beyond what is expected of him, and his involvement and dedication in this community initiative has greatly contributed to the mission, goals, and objectives of the Nantucket Police Department. Detective Kelly is being presented the Public Safety Service Award for his highly accreditable accomplishment that has brought public acclaim to the department as a result of his training, dedication to duty, and service to the public. Detective Kelly has received 2 prior awards. In 2015, he was recognized and given a Meritorious Service Award, and in 2017, he was given a Life Saving Award. Congratulations, Detective Kelly. The next award we're going to give is to Phil Hubbard, one of our VIPs, Volunteers in Policing. Phil's being recognized for his work as a member of the department's Volunteer in Policing Service, VIP program. Phil was one of the first members of the community to join the program when it began in 2011. He typically works every Friday morning, greeting island residents with a smile and a professional demeanor. He has built trust with the staff of the department as well as the community we serve. Since he started as a volunteer in 2011, Phil has worked 1,030 plus hours, which is the equivalent of $27,122 in staff time. While on shift, no, you don't get a check for that, Phil. And you're not getting a raise. So while on shift, Phil has worked on several programs to include the Department Telephone Reassurance Program. This program provides an opportunity for elderly and disabled members of the community to call into the police department every day and have a conversation with a staff member, letting us know if they're having any trouble. If a person signed up for the program and they don't call in during their appointed time, an effort is made to contact them to ensure they are okay. Phil also works in our closed case evaluation program by contacting victims of closed cases to see if they have any more information that perhaps they'd forgotten when they filed their initial report. Phil's being awarded the Public Service Award in recognition of his participation in the Volunteer in Policing Service Program as a member of the public who has provided outstanding assistance to the department and has contributed significantly to public safety in our community. Congratulations, Phil. I have to add, since the department started a VIP program with people like Phil, we have gotten 0 to very, very few complaints about the service at the window of the police station. They have a way of dealing with it. Our next award goes to a group of officers, 3 of whom were unable to make it because of either prior commitments or duty called tonight. The next award goes to Sergeant Dan Furtado, Sergeant John Rocket, Officer John Muir, Officer Amanda Schwenk, and Officer Richard Harrington. Not able to be here tonight was Detective Robert Hollis, Detective Jackie Mason, and Officer Michael Mastriano. This award is being made in recognition of the tremendous work performed by these officers as part of the department's field training program. Over the past couple of years, the department has hired and trained 13 new student police officers to fill vacancies created by new positions and resignations. As a member of the field training unit, these officers were responsible to provide a minimum of 14 weeks of intense one-on-one training following the student officer's graduation from the state-sponsored 20-week-long police officer basic training program. The field training program is designed to ensure that a police officer is afforded hands-on task-specific training unique to our community. This training is intense and stressful for both the student officer and the field training staff. These officers ensured that all tasks were accomplished, evaluations completed, and ultimately made and defended a recommendation on whether or not a student officer should be retained and granted solo patrol status. Service in the field training unit during this period was in addition to the officers' normal duties as patrol officers or patrol sergeants. They performed these duties without benefit of additional compensation. What motivated them was their understanding that a well-trained officer is essential for the safety of all officers, a successful police department, and a safe community. In recognition of this exemplary teamwork, which was superior to which is normally expected, the field training unit is being awarded the Chief's Unit Award. This award recognizes outstanding performance of duty demonstrated by members of the unit as a team rather than as individuals. Several of these officers have received prior awards also. Sergeant Dan Furtado in 2011 was recognized with a Life Saving Award. In 2016 was recognized with a Public Safety Service Award. Sergeant John Rocket in 2015 was recognized with a Life Saving Award. Officer John Muir in 2015 received a letter of commendation, as did Officer Richard Harrington in 2015. Detective Jacqueline Mason in 2017 received a Life Saving Award, and Officer Amanda Schwenk in 2017 a Significant Event Commendation. Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. I think what's especially important to point out is the safety of these officers, which I'm going to introduce next, is in large part the job they do is mainly because of the job this prior group does. In the United States, this year alone, we've had, I think, 17 or 18 police officers been killed in the line of duty. Many of the times when that happens, we point to a training error or something they didn't learn or didn't learn well enough. So that tells you how important the job of a training officer is. The next group of officers I'm going to introduce one at a time are brand new officers that were hired in the last year. We thought we'd take the opportunity for the select board to see who they are and introduce themselves to them. The first one's Officer Robert Shield. Welcome. Yeah. Next one is Officer Nicholas Desai. Must have been something about Nicholas was here this time. Officer Nicholas Iacosi. Officer Timothy Malo. Officer Connor Desmond. Officer Megan Jacalone, I think. Officer James Olson. Officer Christopher McGinty. Officer Chase Colacerdo. And Officer Nicholas Torino. And that concludes our awards for 2018. I'd like to thank the Select Board for your continued support and everything we do out here, we do for the people of this community. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. It's great to see so many new faces. Feels like a very, very safe room tonight.
Thank you all very much. Next, we have a proclamation for National Public Works Week.
Rob, read it?
I
Can you
think
follow
Christy
that?
is going to read the proclamation because she did such a phenomenal job last week.
Unless you want to.
Oh, I'm definitely not going to try to follow the chief, no. Maybe next week.
Okay. Proclamation National Public Works Week, May 19th through 25th, 2019. Whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as water, sewers, highways, and drainage, public buildings, solid waste, and recycling. And whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services. And whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, are vitally dependent upon the efforts and skill of public works officials. And whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff public works departments is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform. Now therefore, the Town of Nantucket Select Board do hereby proclaim the week of May 19th through 25th, 2019 as National Public Works Week in the Town of Nantucket. We call upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contributions which public works personnel make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life, dated this 15th day of May, 2019.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the Select Board support and our efforts every day, but also annually to recognize the efforts of the department's dedication to the town. And as part of that, we've organized the first of the year Fill a Truck event, a food collection event to support the food pantry. will be this Sunday, May 19th, at the Mid-Island Stop and Shop again. We'll be accompanied by the police department this time. So please swing on by and bring us by a non-perishable food item. It would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Road work. We're trying to really keep track of when things are happening, and it's been a little tricky lately because of the weather and the paving availability. So sewer, we've got, is there anything, David, that's changed from the agenda item? Okay. So we've got permanent trench repair at the intersection of Fairgrounds and Old South, paving in the roads that are listed on the agenda, Green Meadows, Rugged Road, Bayberry Lane, and Tacoma, some work along Vesper, Hummock Pond Road, Monomoy Road, Meadowview Drive area. Next, we do have a public hearing. We're starting to get this on the agenda. We'll have it on here for the next week or so. We have a public hearing on June 5th regarding the stop signs on Surfside Road at Bartlett. And if everybody will recall, those are there right now on a temporary basis unless the board votes to keep them there permanently. And if people have an opinion about it, they should come to our public hearing on June 5th and or send in an email. That's it.
Okay. This is the public comment portion of the agenda where anyone can speak on a item not otherwise on the agenda. Okay, seeing none. There's no new business that I'm aware of. We don't actually have minutes. Yes, so we'll hold off on those. Approval of payroll warrants and treasury warrants.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Approval of pending contracts. Are there any questions or comments?
Question on the Island Home one. Is all of that 209,000 going to be expended, or what's the?
Well, this is for the work that the architect is doing to examine the current site and help us determine what it would take to renovate or rebuild the island home at the current site. And I expect that 209,000, yes, will probably be
Oh, it's
utilized.
spent
But I think so.
Okay.
I don't know why.
It's pretty extensive
It is.
based on the charrette.
And there's still quite a bit of work to do now after the charrette.
Right, and I'll repeat my, I think doing this part, designing a building, getting a vote on a building is easy. How are we going to operate it? How do, the operational and the staffing. I think, I would like to see that prior to any vote and prior to spending a lot more money, because I think that's the difficult part of this operation, so.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Finance Department. Brian, can you just describe it a little bit?
Good evening. So we're proposing, or we have sold just about $18 million in what's known as Series A and B bonds. Series A is primarily sewer and some airport money in it. Series B is also sewer and some water company, as well as, ironically enough, some additional money for the island home to fund the remainder of that contract from the $1 million appropriation a couple years ago. And then Series C is just a grant anticipation note because we didn't have the ability within the other two series to borrow everything we needed for the airport. So we did a grant anticipation note in anticipation of federal funds coming back that will pay that note off when they're received. I will tell you that I think it was right around, the net interest charge was right around 2% for all of this, which Cinder did say when we sold it was probably some of the best rates that she had seen all year. So we were very fortunate to get a good sale price on all of this.
Okay. Any questions?
No. Motion to approve
Based on,
based on what is included in the packet, or do you need more?
I think just motion to approve approve the motion dated 5/15 in the packet.
Okay. Motion to approve the item dated 5/15 in the packet.
Thank you.
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Next, we have a noise waiver request from Friends of Nantucket Public Schools. This has become an annual drive-in movie out in Tom Nevers. I don't know if there's anyone here for it, but, okay,
And we haven't had any issues before.
not that I'm aware of. Does someone want to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Next, there's a couple more locations being added to the singular wireless. Questions, comments?
Michael Dolan from the law firm of Brown Rudnick. My colleague Ed Perry was here previously about several other locations that we're proposing for small cell antenna facilities. These are the last two that we had in this group, and as referenced, they're on Monomoy and F Street, and similar small cell design to address real data capacity issues and tremendous consumer demand for better speeds and more coverage.
Thank you. Any questions?
These are more or less the exact same style that we saw a couple months ago, or a month ago.
Yeah, they have an antenna with an equipment cabinet and a small meter box. Yeah.
Okay. I'd make a motion to approve both additional sites.
Second.
All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next on to public hearings. We have a public hearing to consider joint utility petition from National Grid, Nantucket Electric, and Verizon New England. These all relate to improvements on Old South in association with the Richmond. Oh, could you just come to the mic? I'm sorry. Oh, is that one working? Okay.
Jim,
So I'll open the public hearing.
yes, Jim Huxley, engineer with National Grid. We're looking to relocate 4 poles between Lovers Lane and Reglan Ave. And one will be on town property, the other 3 will be relocated to private property.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Are there any comments from the public? Any questions from the board?
My question would just be, David Gray from SOAR's comments were pretty significant about just making sure that there are no conflicts, and I just wanted to make sure that you had seen those and were okay with those.
I haven't seen anything.
You haven't seen them? I can read them off, but it's mostly just that there are 2 separate forest mains and a gravity line in the project area that have been marked out numerous times since the project started, and extreme caution needs to be used in this area.
Okay. Yeah, they usually given a list of things to do, but I haven't seen it yet. So I'll
Yep.
let you get that.
I will note too that this has been pretty extensively reviewed by the various town departments, and everyone is pretty okay with that.
Okay, so we'll provide the comments to you and just work closely with the sewer department. But are there any other public comments? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing.
Move approval?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, just want to make note for people who are coming to the mics, apparently that one is not working, so use that one, please.
Okay, so we're going to stick with the mic on this side of the room if anyone wants to reposition. Okay, next we have a public hearing to consider an application for a transfer of an all-alcoholic beverage license at the Graydon House.
Yes, good evening. This application, as you mentioned, is a transfer of the annual in-holder all alcohol license currently, the DBA at the Graydon House, to new owners, Cal Mercante, if I'm saying this wrong, I apologize, LLC. It's going to be DBA VMR. VMR? Okay, I'll let him say that. So what this is similar in sense to a new application. However, the difference, as I mentioned in the comments, is that it's still in operation while this is going through, but the current owner is liable for the operation of the premises and responsible for the operation of the premises while this is happening. So anything that happens or any liability is with the current owner. The current LLC will retain management of the hotel rooms, and they will be essentially the landlord with this new LLC. This new LLC will take over operation and responsibility for the liquor license. There's no changes in the actual license as far as it being an annual in-holder license, all alcohol license, all the same conditions in the licenses will still exist. This management group is also responsible for the licenses at Ventuno, which we recently did the change of beneficial interest of that license, and also Pizzeria Jamel, correct? Jamel, okay. On Chestnut Street, which was just approved a few months ago, back in February. So it's the same group there. We don't have history of violations with this group, with the folks that are running the management company. Per the state, they review any owed taxes and things of that sort. With the ownerships, they'll run through that. We don't have anything currently owed to the town from the LLC, so that's been cleared. And they will review that, and once that's approved, then they will be retain ownership of that. Also, the licenses, there's no property rights in the license. It's not something they can sell, which they are not doing so, but that's something that's obviously looked at as well. It'll just be a change and a landlord situation with the new owners. And the applicant is here for any questions.
And it's clear that the same provisions on the patio, because that had a lot of
Absolutely.
extensive discussion
Correct.
about it being only served at the
Correct.
seating.
That's correct. Every single
seating.
thing on these licenses, and we've reviewed that, is going to be retained. It's just looking, it's going to be more helpful. We've had changes of managers in this location and things. I think this will be better for the owners to have someone running it that has experience in the restaurants.
Okay. If you want to say anything, you're welcome to. Any questions from the board for the applicant? This is a public hearing. Are there any public comments on this license change? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and go to a vote if the board's ready.
I would move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, last public hearing is to consider an application for an alterations of an annual wine and malt license at 45 Surfside Road.
And I'm going to recuse again. I've sold them some drinks and things.
Okay, so this is an application for an alteration of the premises for an existing license, an annual wine and malt license, doing business as 45 Surfside. As we've mentioned in the comments, we have reviewed this application in the past. They have applied for this. When the history of this is in 2016, when they originally applied for an all alcohol license at this location, the board denied an all alcohol license, and with the suggestion that the applicant come back with perhaps a beer and wine application. It is located across the street from the elementary school, and that's obviously anything within 500 feet of a school or religious institution is something we have to consider if it's detrimental to that. And something that close to the school during the day, things of that sort was considered, and the board was not comfortable issuing an all alcohol license. They did come back with a beer and wine application at the time, and that was approved in 2016, and they began operations, I believe, in December of that year. They have a patio, which I believe there's photos and a layout of in here as well that is in front of the premises, that they're asking for ability to have service and consumption of alcohol, the beer and wine, on this patio. With the original application, it was conditioned that alcohol service and consumption would be inside the building only. From the beginning, I know there's been objection with the police department as far as an alcohol license across the street from the school in this location. That objection still is today. That was an objection the last time as well, as far as allowing for service in this area outdoors. So the ABCC guidelines also we put in there as well, as far as what you should consider when considering extending the premises to a patio. And they meet those requirements as far as being contiguous to the licensed premises so that they can see obviously any service out there and control that. It must be enclosed by a fence or rope or other means, which it is. So those are the things that you should consider, obviously, when considering this for an outdoor area as well. With that objection, if the board did choose to allow for this service, there would certainly be restrictions on that. Obviously, it cannot leave the patio, not the parking lot. It would be on the patio service only. So there would be conditions that we included in there as well. So is there any questions on that history or the requirements? And they're allowed, just quickly, it was denied, and they are allowed, like in most cases of denial, to come back after 1 year to apply again for this extension.
Actually, has anything changed since then? I think last year there were some questions about.
You know, we don't have any violations. You know, there's been no violations of service in that sense, and they've kept up with inspections and things of that sort. So no, there's no existing violations or anything that's really occurred that in the past year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, so you got the story there, but yes, once again, we're interested to have the license outside so that our guests during the summertime, when school is not open, can sit outside and have a wine or beer. It's very awkward when we have beer and wine offered inside, and then someone will say, oh, well, I'm just gonna go, and we have to say, I'm sorry, but you cannot drink that outside. You need to drink it here. And then they hand it right back to you. So that's uncomfortable but necessary. We have rules we have to follow, and so we do. But it would be nice if those people could enjoy a nice sandwich or something with a glass of wine or beer. I understand we're close to the school, but I think it's a non-issue because school's not open. And so you know, as far as the school and all of that, you know, it's good that the school's near us because we hire so many of the students there. It's a great opportunity for them. At the same time, when the skating club comes, the high school, the hockey team, or the football, soccer, all those people come and say, can you give us a donation? They're so close, they're gonna come over and ask. Well, sure, we're going to donate. They're our neighbors. They're right in the vicinity. So we're just all working together to, you know, keep our business alive and thriving for the year, keep our young people working and productive during the year and during the summertime. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Okay. Questions?
I think my question would be that you mentioned that it's not an issue because school would be closed, but we haven't discussed limiting it to only times when the school is closed. So I'm just curious what you're sort of requesting or suggesting there. If you're saying it would only be in July and August when school is out, because in theory this would be for all year. So if there was a nice day in May, people could be outside.
Well, of course, that's up to you. I imagine that that's something that you're going to discuss, and we of course would understand that. It makes perfect sense. If the issue is the fact that the school is across the street and you know, within a certain proximity, we understand that, we get that, and yes, people do sit outside in May, but okay, that's fun. It's not 85 degrees and you want a beer. Usually they're probably going to have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. It's still pretty cool. I mean, we could see that the last couple of weeks. So I don't think that that's something they're really going to be interested in. And if you decide that that's not the way it's going to go, well, that's fine too.
Do you have any plans to expand to dinner service? I remember when we first issued your liquor license, it was very much discussed that you would be serving dinner. And that was, for me, that was actually more of the selling point to give you the beer and wine license. It just made more sense that it would be in the evening. It wouldn't be during school hours where there would be more alcohol service. But you're sticking with your current business model?
Well, we are, because that's what's working for us.
Okay.
Sure, anybody would love to be open breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You have bills to pay, then certainly that's going to help. But for right now, it's not feasible for us in terms of hiring personnel and that sort of thing. Maybe in the future, if we can do that, we would love that. But for right now, this is what we can manage.
Christy, do you have questions?
Yeah, I was just thinking about your setup as a cafe, and so people are going to be taking the liquor out into the porch, and how you'd be able to monitor that versus if you were a restaurant, you'd kind of have the staff out serving and watching people, and how you would deal with that with people behind the counter.
Right. Well, of course, everybody that works at the counter that serves alcohol is tip certified. And that's pretty rigorous. I mean, it's not easy. I took it myself, and I was surprised at the questions that they ask. So they understand that they have to pay attention to that, to who's buying alcohol, and of course, where it's going. It's tougher now than it would be then, because we can't allow them to walk out the door. At least now they would be able to sit down. You know who your customer is. If they have a beer, they probably have a sandwich too, so they're going to go outside. And also, it's in a glass, so, and hopefully we'll keep those glasses, because sometimes they love our glasses with the little bike on there. But we pour it, and then they go outside and sit down, because that's what we do inside.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Anyone is welcome to speak.
My daughter pours.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how this goes. I just like kind of lined up behind her. But I just wanted to add, so when you say like the school's in session for those couple of weeks, if there's a nice day in May, we're only open until 2 p.m. So by the time school gets out, we're already gone, and all the customers are gone anyways. I know it's almost June, but we're still only open till 2. So it almost lines up perfectly. And if that's something that we need to say, hey, school gets out at this day, we're happy to oblige with just, I don't know if we're allowed to do that. But, and then also your question to the, how restaurants you feel like they can monitor it better, because we go to the tables, and how we're going to monitor outside. Even though we do have a window, and I feel like it's very easy to see outside, we typically call out names for people to come get food, but when they are outside, we have to pretty much be a waiter and bring their food and all the stuff outside, so we pretty much end up being a waiter anyways.
I don't know the full schedule, but in the summer, there's a lot of summer programming that takes place at the school that's not actually within school hours. There's comings and goings of kids at much more different times, going to the ice rink. There's kids going on their own to the skate park, and there's going to be a big new playground there, as well as the one that's already at NES. And the camps are split up into different kinds of hours that use the gymnasiums and use the facilities. The community school is in the NES. So I know we did talk about that last year of limiting it to just when school's not in session, but school's never completely out of session in terms of its use with children's activities.
It's rare that I see kids without a parent. So during the summertime and all of that, they're not just roaming around. The kids, you can see the parents are pretty careful to make sure that they're with them. They're not wandering around. So that much I've noticed.
Can I just respond to that real quick as far as what we can limit? I think the limitation needs to be on hours as far as that, and I don't think we can really go in and say July 1st to August 17th. Okay. The limitation really that you can place on is going to be hours of service.
So you could say that it would have to end at 2 p.m. Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Did you have anything more you want to say? You are welcome to.
We will be changing our hours soon, and till 4 o'clock, so you know.
And also, if I may, I've worked every single day, and so has she, since we opened. I think it's a blur, but I think 2 years ago or so. And I don't think we've ever had a person get more than just one beer or one mimosa. It's really not a place where you go to drink. It's more so you get one beer with your sandwich. That's it. I don't think we've really sold more than, it's not really that kind of place. That's all I want to say. Thanks.
Should I close the public hearing? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Board discussion? Board motions? Thoughts?
I don't really see that much being different from when we looked at this a year ago. And I'm not really comfortable yet to make an exception with the 500-foot rule in this scenario. I don't know if, I think the enforceability of the date changes, and similar to the discussion we had last year, it doesn't really seem feasible to make some of those limitations. One thing that I think would have changed it for me a bit is actual screening on the porch. I think that's something that could be added in a way that would still give you the patio feel without being as visible from the road. So I'm not really, in favor of making an exception in this situation at this time.
I think if there was a coverage similar to Fusaro so that it's not visible from the street, I think that would make a huge difference and that would make it a little bit more feasible. I agree that putting the police say it's not right to have the date restriction, that we can only do the time restriction, and I think that would worry me having it during school session, or while school is in session, so not being able to place the date restriction is something that still bothers me.
Okay. I sympathize with the situation because I understand how that must be really awkward when someone does want to drink. I mean, I've never seen someone actually with a drink when I've been in your place, and so I don't think it's a huge portion of your business, which I think it would be a lot bigger if it was a dinner service kind of place, which would then be further away from child activity hours. And I'm worried about opening the door to more outdoor service anywhere near schools in general. This isn't the only place that has the exception of being within 500 feet of a school. I don't think that there's a whole lot compelling to change last year's decision. Does somebody want to make a motion?
I would make a motion to deny the request for alteration of the premises. Due to being within 500 feet of a school.
Is there a second? I can second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, motion carries 2-1. Town manager's report. We have a presentation.
Thank you. We have a presentation. This is a report, the Planning and Land Use Services. It's a departmental operational review report. I wanted to give a little bit of an introduction to it. Over the past, 10 to 15 years, maybe even closer to 20, every couple of years it's been routine for us to do operational reviews of departments. We've done, for example, finance, fire, town admin, police, public works, IT, HR, and culture and tourism. So it's been sort of Plus's turn, I guess, to have an operational review. Julia Novak of the Novak Group is going to give you the overview. There are a number of items in the report that either are in the works to be implemented or have already been implemented. As a result of the report being initiated some number of months ago, we've had some personnel changes, and there have been some things that are different now that were not the case at the beginning of the report. Some of the other recommendations will be implemented with oversight by town admin in conjunction with PLUS. Some are dependent on additional staffing, and there may be some additional policy items for the board and the planning board to consider in the future.
Well, good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to present the recommendations from our review of planning and land use operations for the town. My name is Julia Novak, and my colleague Jen Reichelt is here as well. Jen was the senior associate on the project for us this year. So tonight, what I want to do is provide you with an overview of the methodology and an understanding of what the town expected of us. We'll review each of the 11 recommendations and then turn it back to you all to ask us any questions that you might have before we leave you here this evening. So in terms of purpose and methodology, the scope of work that was outlined in the town's RFP was quite detailed and asked that we engage staff, members of relevant town boards and commissions, as well as department stakeholders, and then assess the operations of the PLUS department and compare the structure that you have in Nantucket with other towns in the Commonwealth. To accomplish this scope of work, we did a combination of individual interviews, small group interviews or focus groups, and administered a survey that was shared with PLUS stakeholders and was also available on the town website. We supplemented the qualitative learning from these endeavors by reviewing data that was supplied by the town about processes and procedures and their workload. We developed process maps that show the step-by-step process for various approval processes, including the HDC, the planning board, and the building permit or certificate of occupancy processes. These are all included as attachments in the report. We also researched processes that are in other communities and identified best practices that we believe were both relevant and scalable that could be applied in Nantucket. I want to set the stage. Since 1973, the island's planning functions have been coordinated by the NPEDC. The 11-member NPEDC appoints the Director of Planning, and the NPEDC then serves as Nantucket's regional planning agency, which allows you to be eligible for state and federal funding that supports transportation improvements, planning, and provides technical assistance to the town. The town's elected planning board is responsible for approval of residential and commercial permit requests and recommends changes to the town's zoning code, as well as completing the master plans intended to provide a basis for decision-making with regard to long-term physical developments of the town. The Director of Planning is employed by the NPEDC, and the PLUS department supports all the various boards and commissions, including the NPEDC, the Planning Board, HDC, Concom, etc., that are part of the land use process for the town. Many things have evolved in the town operations since the creation of the NPEDC that have led you to the administrative structure that you have today. In 2012, the town and the NPEDC entered into a memorandum of agreement to help coordinate planning and building activities. This essentially created the department that we refer to as PLUS today. And since its creation, the leadership of the department has worked to improve the customer experience, to improve the department culture, and staff accountability. They've consolidated project files, improved turnaround times, improved communication with clients and between the various divisions of PLUS, and are moving forward towards implementing the InterGov system with e-permitting and electronic applications and submittals. So truly, nothing stands still. Likewise, since we began the report, as the town manager mentioned, we started this work last year. We did most of our field work in October, and there's been a lot of changes even in that time. The department, when we did our field work, was really in flux. There have been personnel changes. The staff have been implementing the InterGov systems and many of the things that were highlighted in the 2018 staffing review. So the intention of our work is to build on the improvements that in PLUS and to raise questions that might require further conversation with you and other town boards should you decide to enter into those conversations. So there are 11 recommendations in the report. The first 9 that I'm going to review are kind of what we call continuous improvement recommendations. So again, just designed to build on the work that's already been done by the leadership of PLUS. So environmental leadership is one of the board's strategic goals. And as the town pursues grants for a sustainability program, it's appropriate to align programs and activities of the town that support the triple bottom line of people, planet, and prosperity. The town is already making organizational moves in this regard, and this should continue as the town works to establish its sustainability office. A development review team is something that we see as a widely accepted best practice. The purpose is to bring together all of the disciplines involved in the review process so there is a regular opportunity to discuss interdepartmental concerns. Plus does use what they call a consolidated review on more complex project. This recommendation suggests standardizing that procedure for all land use applications and would be chaired by an assistant town manager who ensures cooperation from all departments. This also provides a time for applicants to know when everyone who's involved in the review will be in the same room at the same time, and they can talk through comments and address any potential conflicts. One of the unique things about Nantucket is that applicants decide where they want to enter the development review process. There's no standard order for reviews with the various boards and committees. And while flexibility is nice, it could be useful to know when it is best to begin with the Conservation Commission versus the HDC or the Zoning Board of Appeals. So the recommendation is for Plus staff to work with the boards to develop guidelines that would be used to provide applicants and the board some guidance in coordinating the overall process. Plus is very much an in-person shop. Applicants are encouraged to stop by or call. It's informal. You can just kind of walk in and be served by folks at the front desk. And that's great to learn about process and get questions answered. But more and more people have an expectation that information is available online. And so having frequently asked questions accessible without having to contact staff and have them available, if your question pops into your head and is not necessarily aligned with office hours, would be useful and would enhance the customer experience. Likewise, scheduling for permits and inspections is not standardized, so some applications like electrical and plumbing are available online. Others have to be picked up in person. So having a consistent way of getting these applications would again enhance the customer experience and the process for your applicants. The HDC has a big job in Nantucket. In the last 3 years, they've averaged 72 items per meeting. On average 24 on this consent agenda, but that leaves 48 items that are available for discussion at each meeting. And these meetings consistently get carried over because they're so lengthy. So while HDC and Plus staff have made some steps to manage the length and the frequency of the meetings, there's still a pretty intensive process. So when we did our research, we found that other towns have worked to identify certain types of HDC permits that can be approved administratively by the staff when there's not a substantive change in the appearance. And while this would require legislation, it could produce improvements both for applicants as well as for the volunteers who are taking their time to serve on the HDC. One of the critical functions of Plus is ensuring that ensuring construction complies with zoning and HDC requirements. So there's a lot of approvals that happen on the front end of the process. All the conditions are made. Enforcement of those, however, is only on a complaint basis. So having a proactive process where could be advantageous, and certainly having a conversation about understanding what the town's priorities are with regards to enforcing those types of conditions could be very useful. And cross-training is an area where Plus has already taken some steps to implement. And this may be an area where having building inspectors cross-trained for zoning compliance could result in ensuring compliance as part of the normal inspection process rather than relying solely on your zoning compliance coordinator. The last recommendation in the continuous improvement category is about communications, which always can be better, right? So Plus does have a practice of an annual staff meeting and division-wide meetings that are held monthly within each division. The recommendation is to have monthly department-wide meetings so you can share town-wide issues and updates on a regular basis to help create those connections both between the department and between Plus and the rest of the town operations. There's two recommendations that I would consider structural or relationship types of recommendations. The structure of Plus is unique in Nantucket, as it should be, and the town has evolved and grown since 2012. The town manager and director of planning have been working together to achieve all the various improvements that have been gained. The Director of Planning is appointed by the NPEDC and serves at their discretion. This year, NPEDC asked the town manager to provide input on the director's performance evaluation, which is a very positive step. Dispersed accountability, however, can be very challenging, and the Director of Planning and the town manager need to work together to make sure that this unique structure continues to work. The town manager needs to be an active participant in conversations around performance and compensation for the Plus director. The final recommendation is one designed to encourage conversation between the Select Board, the Planning Board, and the NPEDC. It's not news to you, and I've probably said it already 8 times tonight, that Nantucket is unique. And among the regional planning agencies, it's especially unique in that only one member of the RPA is the town, the county, and the island. In other regions, the regional planning agency would function very differently than it does in Nantucket. Both have responsibilities here for addressing the island's planning needs, with the NPEDC focusing on long-range planning issues and transportation, while the planning board makes regulatory decisions about land use. There's an overlap of players involved in the important conversation, but it begs the question whether or not regional planning agency designed for multi-jurisdiction agencies makes sense in Nantucket. The general fund pays 90% of the budget for the NPEDC. Could another board serve as the regional planning agency? Would it make sense for the town manager to be the appointing authority and establish conditions of employment for the director of planning as she does for other department directors in the town? These are questions, ones that you may have a quick yes or no answer to, or perhaps ones that you might find worthy of engaging with relevant boards and commissions to explore. We've not said in our report that the current structure doesn't make sense. What we have said is that it's unique, and it seems appropriate to reflect on the other evolutions that you've had of your town government, the adoption of a home rule charter, the move from the town administrator to a town manager, and then decide if how you would answer the question about how to best manage the town's planning functions in 1973, in 1981, and in 2012 would be the same answer today as you move into 2020. So that's an overview of our recommendations. From here, as the town manager mentioned, she and the director of planning will work together on the administrative items, and then in those areas that are more policy issues, there would be conversations between the select board and other town boards. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just have a question more for Libby. The ones that I think since the plan was started, there are some that are already underway. I was just wondering if you could pull some of those out.
Yeah, let me, just bear with me while I'm flipping
I've got
through,
it.
because I didn't really, identify them. Well, recommendation, I mean, I'll just quickly maybe skim through them. Continuing to strengthen the relationship between the town manager and the director of planning. I think the director and I have a very strong relationship, and we communicate constantly about a variety of issues, so I think that is, ongoing. Consolidating the town's environmental and sustainability functions is part of the board's strategic plan, and so I would call that underway. Establishing a development review team to be chaired by an assistant town manager. We're in the process of hiring the second assistant town manager, as you all know, so I wouldn't say that's totally underway yet because of waiting on staffing.
How will that differ from the coordinated review process that's been in place?
Well, that's a good question. I think the recommendation had to do with a more centralized individual in town admin gathering together the departments that are under town admin to review different types of projects and things that come forward as they particularly affect the town departments.
Yeah, may I add a little bit more? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we find when there's comments, and so you're going to have comments on applications from all the departments within Plus, but there also might be comments from sewer, from public works, from the fire department. And sometimes comments conflict among departments. And it's really helpful to make sure that there's someone at the table who can really kind of work through those issues with with the two department directors, kind of putting an assistant town manager in charge of that process. Facilitates that, and it also, adds a little bit of gravitas to get all the different players to the table and kind of point out that this really is a town-wide function. These departments aren't just there because Plus asked them to be there. They're part of a regular development review team that meets regularly, coordinates, and addresses applicants' questions.
So the real suggested change is to basically have the assistant town manager chair the meeting and make sure everybody's there.
And to have it as a regular part of the process, not just when it's a complicated, so not the coordinated review is called for on special occasions. This would be a regular established meeting, either monthly or bi-weekly, for all land use applications.
For all land use applications?
Yeah. To review them.
Okay, that seems like a really big expansion of efforts, but we'll talk about it.
Absolutely.
Sorry, go on.
I would say that one of the recommendations 9, ensure that cross-training exists for the safety and code compliant division. I would say that with the arrival of our new building commissioner, who by the way is here tonight, Paul Murphy, that is underway, and he's done a lot to engage the staff with review and I'm not sure what the title of it is, but I've seen a lot of email about administrative processes being made less complex and more straightforward and easier to understand and have people work through.
Thank you. I have one comment, or maybe just a couple of things coming from being on the HDC for so many years. I'd love to see a process where things could be staff approved for the really small stuff. It's just been an ongoing discussion for as many years as I can remember on how to do that, because then there will be that stray application that gets staff approved that the board didn't see that they won't be happy about. So it's a really tricky thing to come up with the right criteria, especially in a place as unique as Nantucket, where every property is so different. They're not cookie cutter lots that all look the same and have the same visibility levels and so forth. The HDC application itself, I know it's been in the works for a long time to try and revise that, because it's in this day and age, it is pretty ridiculous that it's this big and in triplicate. So I think that those would be fabulous efforts to get streamlined.
I would say too that over the years, Andrew and I have certainly talked about the administrative approval process, and really what it comes down to is the HDC itself approving it in some ways, and they simply have not. So it's not for lack of trying.
It's been an ongoing discussion.
My point on that is we have to dive a little deeper into that. I think that, going forward, I think maybe a historic commission, that might be something, if we get one up and running again, that they would tackle, and I think that the workload right now that the HDC faces is pretty enormous. So there's no time left to really focus on anything else. There's no time left to focus on sort of enforcement, which if we need to, which we're weak on. So, I think that they may need some staffing. We may need some other issues there. It was just one of my notes when I read this. I felt like we didn't, hit that strong enough. Just was one of my comments.
Didn't hit the, sorry, just clarify what?
Well, just the process of the HDC. It might be that there's 2 HDC boards. Maybe there's one that handles all the historic homes in the downtown, and there's another that handles everything else. If they're seeing 70-something applications, that's not something that you can do a credible job on. They do, and I'm not saying they don't. They work really hard, but it's hard to really sort of inform people and get the proper preservation and some of the other things that we should really be encouraging. And so anyway, I just thought it's more than just let's do this quickly and let's put it on speed dial. There's some that we should slow down on. There are some buildings that we should be monitoring, and we should be making sure that we are doing the right thing for, not just allowing them to change them quicker. So anyway,
That reminded me too. One of the things that I saw when I read this was an opportunity not just to improve the customer experience, but to hopefully decrease some of the workload. It seems everyone in Plus is really sort of buried in work, and so the amount of time that it takes to walk people through all these different applications, if there's a way to streamline it or at least make it more clear and the information accessible, then hopefully people have more time to focus on other things.
And just kind of going off that point, I think what I was most impressed with is, even though they are buried in so much work and they handle each case very uniquely, the customer service, everybody gave really great reviews, and everybody is really happy with the service that they're receiving when they step in or when they call. So the fact that they are overworked and, buried in work, and they still are happy and, giving off a good customer service is, I think, really good to recognize.
Okay,
Thank you.
to be continued.
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, will we at some point have a list of sort of what staff is working on and dates and what, of the recommendations? Because there's a lot involved here. There are a lot of recommendations, and this could easily be something that gets sort of off to the side. So
Well, I think for the administrative items, what we'll probably do is not combine exactly, but kind of combine them with the staffing study that is already underway, and we're working on with Novak on an implementation plan for that. So you will be getting regular reports on both, probably as maybe one agenda item, or I don't know yet how we do it, but concurrently.
And so 9 and 10, the other two, is that up to us to talk to the other boards, or how would we? What is your recommendation? Like how do we make sure that we follow through on these things?
So I think if it's a conversation that you're interested in having, a joint meeting between the planning board and NBTEDC and the select board would make a lot of sense, just to talk about what are the opportunities and what's working, and hear everyone's perspective about what might be the right answer to that question in 2019.
I'm assuming it's on the NP and EDC agenda coming up, so you can report back to us.
I will be reporting back, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it. And I think there's room for improvement on some things. We've had some rather large sort of, issues that was sort of a split, where the town is wondering one thing and another department's wondering another, and I think there is an opportunity to bring these together. And, I hope that we're able to do that.
Communication is key.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Julia. We appreciate it. Annual town health insurance update.
So we have Ed Burns here from NFP, our health insurance consulting firm, and he has been coming in over the last few years to give you an annual report. I asked him to spice it up a bit because health insurance reports are dry.
And it's getting late. No one wants to go to sleep yet, right? What we wanted to do here tonight, what I was asked to do, was we had a rather significant plan change in November of 2017, and just to give you an idea of how much money possibly was avoided by making those plan changes. So we did that in November of 17, and the financial results that resulted due to this agreement resulted in a first-year cost avoidance of 6.9%, or almost $1 million of cost avoidance. Back in that period of time, medical care inflation was 9 to 10%, and you virtually avoided the entire thing by making those plan changes. These numbers are annualized, by the way, and once again, we weren't working with a full year when we made these changes. So the entire the mitigation fund was actually 9.6%. The actual savings was 9.6, but we had a mitigation fund that went back to the employees, was almost $500,000 going back to $400,000 going back to the employees, which lowered it down to 6.9% for that first year only. So then you got to look at the next year. How does all this impact in a subsequent year? Well, in fiscal year 19, medical care inflation was 8.5 to 9%. We actually ended up with the PPO, the largest group, and the HMO plans having a 6% rate increase. while the master medical plan received an 8%. So actually, all of those changes weren't impacted in that experience evaluation because it was just done, midway through that particular fiscal year. And planning ahead for another year, we normally would have been using 8.5% to 9% for inflation. But even using those numbers, we ended up with 6% on the majority of people and an 8% on the master medical people, which really, in the industry, they call it bending the curve, medical care inflation, making it different than what it is. It's important to understand that medical care, no matter what deductible you have, no matter what copays you have, medical care inflation is still medical care inflation. And when you're predicting something 12 months into the future, that's the only number you have to work with is the number the actuaries give you. And so we're multiplying your claims experience by that big 8.5% or 9% number and still coming up with a renewal that is less than that. So that is pure cost avoidance. And during fiscal year 19, as you can see, we increased that percentage avoided by up to 13.8%, or roughly $1.8 million. And all that is we're putting in that 8.5% to 9% rate increase and then backing it down to the real increase. And that's an additional cost savings or cost avoidance in a future year. We did the same thing in fiscal year 20, and another percentage avoided of 13.9%, or almost $2 million. It's important to also note that it is not just the 9.6 original rate reduction for the plan changes. That was witnessed right ahead because we were lowering that rate increase at the time, so we already gave credit for that. Addition to that is there was movement in the plan design, people moving from higher cost plans to lower cost managed care plans. So we actually had movement in that regard, and that produces, in addition to utilization, additional lower costs for the plan. And that's where these numbers came from. And we, even in fiscal year 20, we saw even more movement to the PPO plan, to the HMO plan, which is now in double digits in terms of population. So it's actually improving.
Approximately how many moved and how many are left in master medical?
Oh, boy. I should have been prepared for that, right? I should have been. I'm not. But
No, that's all right.
There is man, you don't have to remember that. Actually, the master medical has a significant shrinkage, and it's getting down into manageable numbers, I would say. So the PPO remains the biggest plan, which is sometimes understandable.
Yeah, and just for the camera, the PPO is a very good plan.
Very good.
In some ways, it's better than the master medical, and it's a lot cheaper.
Well, there's certainly some preventative care that is covered under the managed care plans, which is not covered under an indemnity plan.
Right, exactly.
Yep. So it is, for the most part, a better plan. My opinion. Okay, there we go. Don't have to get into this too much. It's only there to point out that November, halfway through this slide, which is like 30-something months worth of experience, that's what I look at, trying to find the appropriate, correct answer. But halfway through where that arrow is, that's when the plan change occurred. We really only look at the most recent 24 months in any event. And you can see the very bottom, third column from the right, very bottom, you'll see the current 12 months ran at 101% loss ratio. That includes large claims. And the prior 12-month period was 93.8 or 6%. That also includes large claims. When you take out the large claims, that was totally flat. There was no inflation shown in your plan designs between those two 12-month periods. That is a direct result of the plan changes and the movement between plan designs, because this is a compilation of all the Blue Care Elect plan, the Master Medical, and the HMO plan. So that's the only reason that slide's there. This slide, just simply, that's the renewal formula. This year's renewal, I believe everyone's aware, came out to be 6% rate increase for July 1st. Renewal increased rates by 6%. The inflation, this point in time, is about 8.5%. So we're still bending that curve of inflation curve. Better renewal than inflation, in part due to the plan changes made in November of 17 and the resultant demographic movements to lower cost managed care plans. We did have a significant increase in large claims during the most recent 12 months. But it's offset by the fact that the town purchases reinsurance that forgives any claims in excess of $175,000 per individual. So we did have a lot of large claims this year compared to prior years. We actually came up with a better renewal because of it, because we're pushing those claims away from us because we reinsured them with somebody else.
Are those claims, do they correlate to age of our workforce, or is there anything that causes them?
It's partially due to the age of a workforce. I'd say partially. But once again, they're shock loss claims, so they're significant illnesses that don't necessarily repeat themselves from year to year to year. Some people may have this particular condition for more than 1 year, but the claims go up and down. So that's why you buy the insurance, to avoid that, because you would never be able to set a rate if you were trying to consider shock loss claims. We also had another thing that impacts your budget lines are how many people are covered, and we did have an increase of 1.2%, number of covered individuals between the most recent 12 months and the just prior, which is probably a good thing, because employment is important to everybody, and you also need the people to get the job done. Libby wanted to make sure I mentioned, what other options are there out there for the town to look at in this year, every month from now on. And the first one, obviously, is the Group Insurance Commission, the GIC. And the first issue we have with that is that they don't have any Blue Cross Blue Shield plans, and most of the contracts here include Blue Cross Blue Shield in the agreements. But beyond that, there's plenty of joint purchasing groups around, the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group, the Mayflower Municipal Health Group, the Gateway Health Group, Southeastern Mass Health Group, all basically South Shore, Cape and Islands. The problem with most of the JPAs is they have significant surpluses that they've developed over time, and there is a buy-in. So when you join, you want to be on equal footing with all the old members that have been there developing surpluses over the years. And I don't know what most of them are right now, because they change every single year. The last time I looked at Plymouth Mayflower Municipal Health Group, it was $3,500 per person. So a pretty significant amount of money to buy into one of these groups. Most of those groups that I mentioned all have Blue Cross plans. They also have Harvard Pilgrim. But the other thing we have to look at and be aware of is that it's expensive out on Nantucket. You're an island. The claim costs are higher out here. So when other groups are looking at you, they don't necessarily want your claims in their experience, because it's going to push their claims up. I think the town and the whole management team is doing a great job, managing what you have out here. And I think we can continue doing that, and though every year we have to look at all the options for you. But I think we can continue to do a good job and try to keep things under control and keep trying to bend the curve of medical care inflation.
My understanding initially was we were going to get a couple years where we'd have savings, and then it would it wouldn't be quite the same again.
Well,
Is
once
that the
again,
truth?
it's utilization patterns. If utilization is changed by deductibles and higher copays, you want people to get the care that is necessary for them to get better and get back onto the workforce. But at the same time, some utilization patterns need to be changed. Some people, you need to get away from the emergency room and back to clinics or whatever else that may be of lower cost. If the copays can help accomplish that, that'll change, and that'll continue forever. But like I said earlier, medical care inflation is medical care inflation. It doesn't matter whether you have a $500 deductible or no deductible. It's still, you're going to have the same inflation rate.
Right. But I guess I'm sort of looking at it, we got our savings from the plan changes we made, the things that came. Those are going to somewhat disappear. Unless we do the things you're talking about.
Correct. It's cost avoid. You never save anything in health insurance. You can only avoid cost by avoiding a bigger increase.
Is it legal, let's for argument's sake say that the town recognizes one provider does a great job with sort of some part of medical, but it's a lot cheaper than another provider. Can the town recommend people? Can they send people a certain direction?
I don't think the town can do that. I think that's another level of benefit plan design that a lot of carriers are doing. I know the GIC does it. It's called tiering. So you let the insurance companies decide. We have great healthcare in Massachusetts. All of our doctors are great. All of our hospitals are great. But some doctors are more expensive than others, and you can get equally good treatment. I couldn't tell you how to do that, but insurance companies have put that material together. And I would, Blue Cross Blue Shield has certainly done that with their quality care initiative, which actually rates these doctors and actually doesn't force them, but attempts to, through contractual agreements, provide documentation for certain things that helps them manage the care better. Right. So, that's the kind of things we're looking for. Better. The care we're getting is great. We want better results.
Right.
That last longer.
Other questions, comments? Thank you for the update.
You're very welcome.
It was nice,
Thank you.
nice to see those savings, cost avoidance numbers.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is the monthly town management activity report. I won't go over every single thing in the packet, but just some of the highlights. We just did the PLUS operational review. Our coastal resiliency plan is in the process of being finalized, and as we previously discussed, it's more of an outline-ish plan at this point, and then the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee is going to work on, the real development of a full-blown plan, I think. You are scheduled to get an update about the plan at your meeting next week. Sewer master plan is well underway. There are monthly internal review meetings. We're meeting with the capital program committee in June about upcoming projects. The strategic plan, I think you all know that in a few weeks, just about a month, you are having a retreat to review where we are, update, modify, that sort of thing. And there are some other plans in the process of being updated. The host community agreement with Act Natural is final. Spring roadway projects, as we mentioned tonight, are in the process of hopefully happening. We've got pre-season beach preparations ongoing right now. We've had a staff-wide meeting for all those departments that are involved in beach management a couple of weeks ago, and at your meeting next week, I think it's next week. Actually, no, it's June 5th, I believe. You're getting an update about that, as well as a shark update, because there is a Cape Towns meeting. We're invited to it on May 23rd, and we want to be able to update you about that. Great Ponds, we had a forum a couple of weeks ago about pond management principles for the Great Ponds, and you're going to be hearing more about that next week at your meeting when we give you a water quality activities update from all the town departments. Housing discussions ongoing. We're talking about, we got an internal group working on potential town employee housing. It's a big issue to cover. Solid waste management planning ongoing. Short-term rental legislation meeting. There have been meetings. There was a meeting last week with DEP and our legislative reps. You're getting an update about this, I think, next week as well, so I won't go too deep into it so you don't have to hear it all over again, but you'll have an update next week about that. A lot of projects underway. Some of them are listed here. These are the ones that we're most recently been focusing on at the town admin level. And then personnel, we've got a few vacancies that we're working to fill, and as you know, we are starting our preparations for upcoming bargaining for the union contracts that are expiring June 30th, 2020, and that process will get well underway probably this fall, but our strategy and bargaining planning begins tomorrow with an executive session with you all. Any questions? Anything not on there that you want to see going forward?
Thank you.
Okay, committee reports?
I have done.
Well, we did have a meeting with DEP last week about the wastewater, the Cape and Islands wastewater fund tax. And then you all must have seen the follow-up letter that sounds like our CWMP would qualify. Mm-hmm. So, and then Libby and Brian both attended a meeting yesterday that I don't know if they have any comments on.
I'll just tell you some now. We did attend a meeting yesterday. It was the first meeting of the trust. The legislation specifies that the town manager of Nantucket is an ex officio member, so it's non-voting. There is also, the Vineyard has a non-voting member as well, and they voted yesterday that we could participate in the meetings. Is that pretty much? And they elected a chair and a vice chair. We went over a lot of things relating to the fund itself, how it's a subset of the state revolving loan fund, Clean Water Trust, and it's meant to kind of mimic that, but this group will be able to establish its own bylaws and determine, how other projects will be approved, but it is going to follow the already existing map of SRF. The legislators that were very much involved in getting the legislation passed, Representative Sarah Peake and Senator Julian Sear were both there, and representatives from DEP were there, and it was a really good overview of a lot of things that the fund is going to be addressing. So, and as the chair mentioned, now that we have our letter from DEP that pretty much says if you want to be in, you're in, we should decide at some point if we want to opt in. And the finance director and I have talked a little bit about what sort of analysis we're going to need in order to provide the board with a recommendation on that. So we're kind of working on that. We do have a sewer rate study underway, which I think we want to get more done before we make that determination. And we'll be going to the meetings going forward. They said we could call in if we want from time to time, so we might have to do that. There were 2 people from the Vineyard there. Almost every town was represented. There were maybe 2 or 3 towns that weren't there, but for the most part, everybody else was there. I thought overall it was a pretty good meeting.
And there are 2 interesting things for Nantucket. Is one, we are, if we were in the fund, we would be allowed to apply for funding for projects that are already underway or even completed, which puts us in a good position since we've already done so much work on sewer. And we also have the benefit that if we were to institute this and add it to the tax, we can choose when it starts. If we went into it, we could choose to push it out to a further out quarter to really give people notice. So it wasn't the craziness that came into effect with it being approved kind of at the 11th hour for the rest of the tax. And one of the pieces of data I've asked for is to find out where all the other Cape towns are at with their total tax number, because some were at 2 or 4, some are at 0, and some actually at their town meetings changed their local portion up to 6. So, and then we might also have some data coming in the fall of where our beginning numbers fall.
We may start seeing that, but we're not going to see the full extent of the revenue for a couple of years, and we're not going to be able to use it for a couple of years. There was a little bit of discussion about that at a Cape Cod managers meeting that Greg and I attended last week, where somebody from DOR was there talking about that. So there's that, and there's just a bit of an unknown. They also were clear that they are not going to be able to separate out the two types of revenue, the short-term rentals and the hotel motel room occupancy tax. Mm-hmm. It's all going to be lumped in together, and they are not going to be able to separate it. But I think would be able to tell after the first full year based on the increase what we're talking about.
So that'll come up when, because we have sort of 2 initial requests for some of that funding for affordable housing and was it SHAB?
Water quality, affordable housing. Yeah. Let's not forget NRTA year-round service, because we are going to be getting a significant increase in our local assessment for that when it hits the cherry sheet in 2021. And there, I'm sure, are other groups waiting out there to see if they can get in on it as well. So we just want to be careful about allocating too quickly. But those items that you mentioned are certainly things that have been discussed in the discussions leading up to the enactment of the legislation. So they would make sense.
And initially, they'd sort of counted on those two sources being somewhat discernible, because I know at least affordable housing, it was discussing the revenue directly related to the short, as opposed to some of the other, directly related to the new source of revenue.
Yeah, I mean, we should be seeing some pretty significant revenue in the next couple of years between the marijuana tax and the and even more with the short-term rental tax increase.
So if there's information you all want to, I mean, we're going to be working on what we think we should be putting together, but if there's things that you want, let us know so we can definitely work it in.
Okay, the other thing, the CPC's big meeting of the year is on Tuesday. It's at the Athenaeum at 4 o'clock on Tuesday. And NISDA will be the guest speaker about their projects, which are really great restoration happening out there in phases. But the silos were done last year, which was really exciting. And now they're working on some of the other buildings.
Great. There were two wind things that have happened in the last week, actually. There was the meeting with Dylan Fernandez and Julian Sear, and really just discussing. I had questions similar to some of the ones that came from the public a couple weeks ago about what is our special counsel in relation to Vineyard Wind? What is that about? What are we doing? And what are some of the issues? And then there was a meeting today with Equinor, who have one of the bid sites as well, and they're continuing discussions and reaching out about host community agreements. So there's quite a bit of wind activity going on. That's all.
Thought you had a pond update. From
I
last
did,
week.
but you're right. That was last week's meeting was so long. I forgot. I did go to the pond. Oh, thank you for that reminder. I did go to the pond meeting. It was fairly well attended. I think the biggest questions we're looking at were about Maya Comet Pond and how we're managing that. And there's a consultant that's working on looking at some of what the options are, and if in a situation with flooding, when we might open that ourselves. And the discussion really focused around what are we really managing for? Are we managing for the environment? Are we managing for recreational use? Are we managing for property? And I think there's going to be more on that as we go, and also with the water quality update. I think the water quality, the state of the ponds, will really come up in next week's meeting, where Jeff will be able to give everyone the overview of the ponds. And I think it's sort of a mixed, there's nothing that is sort of a raging success right now with the nutrient loading, but some of the numbers are dropping. So, and it's still septic followed by fertilizer being the biggest contributors.
The Cape Selectmen all came last Friday.
That's what I was going to
Yeah, which was interesting. They toured the landfill, told the digester, and sort of had a meeting at the Brotherhood that was interesting to hear.
It was really nice.
The different things that the other communities are doing in regards to composting, and some are ahead of us, some are a lot further behind us, and just sort of, it was interesting.
I thought the Martha's Vineyard, their explanation of their pilot composting program was interesting, and the idea of sort of getting the infrastructure in place before implementing it on scale. And I think just because of the way we are structured, we're going the other direction, but it was interesting to hear their viewpoint.
Yeah, I spoke to them after. I think I may have texted you, may have texted Rita, but I asked them, geez, does this stuff compost? We have a lot of sort of the right kind of plastic, and we think we're doing the right thing. And she said that they don't really know yet. They haven't studied on the vineyard. She toured a bunch of places as one big composting facility in Rhode Island. And they said when they come in stacked, like, when all the cups get stacked at an event, they don't compost at all, ends up like a goopy muck. But if you put them in windrows and separate them and have half a year to a year and a half, they will compost, but you have under very specific conditions. So, that's our first go around. Sort of I've been asking for years, what happens in our digester? And we still haven't quite got a handle on it. We're working on it and we're studying it. But I think it's important because it's going to become a sorting issue at some point. And everyone's trying to avoid that in a way, hoping that the digester will do it or that individuals will do it. But if we're gonna, if we're gonna end up with, with good compost or with, a good system, we have to find a way to get it sorted as efficiently and as possible. So, we've got a lot of work still to do is what I kind of took away from it.
Yeah. I think, we continuously say Nantucket's unique, but it was interesting to hear that we don't have a unique problem, and there's other people on the Cape that are dealing with the same things, and it was really helpful to talk to the different people at the tables about what they're doing versus what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those meetings have been great over the past
Yeah.
years. I've always learned something new. And like you said, I wish there was some way to access what other towns are doing more easily, because it is really all the same issues. So.
Yeah. They said that they plan to have their June meeting, which is their bigger annual meeting. They're going to try to get the governor to come in Hyannis so that it would be easier for us to get there if we want to go. I don't remember what the date is, but I want to see if I can try and go to that. So anyway, is there a motion to adjourn? I mean, I know it's so early, you guys, compared to last week.
Next week it won't be early.
Yeah.
And I won't talk about that tonight. Next time.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.